Okay, so let's have a look at materials in 3ds Max. So far, when we've been creating objects, we've simply been giving them like the basic preview color, and you can change the preview color over here, and you can select a different preview color. But if we want to do anything kind of more complicated than that and assign maybe a texture file to a object, or affect kind of like how shiny the object is, we need to apply a proper material to that object. So the way that we do that is we bring up the material editor, and it's M on the keyboard. So the M for material, if we press that, it'll come up with something looking like this. And this is our material editor. So what we need to do first of all to assign a material is we need to create a brand new material that we're going to be working with. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over to the side here where it says materials in general, and there's one called physical material, and this is going to be kind of like the most standard material we're going to be working with. So if I double click that, I get a kind of what's called a node in the middle here. And then over on the right hand side, if I just make this a little bit bigger, we get lots of different properties for that material. And I'll just drag this up. So the most basic property, if we scroll down to the base color, is the color of that material. And I can affect that. So if I click on the base color, and I come and pick a brand new color for this. So let's make it a nice blue or kind of turquoisey color, like this. Let's click on OK. And what you'll see is that it hasn't actually affected any of the objects in my scene. And that's because even though I've created a new material, I haven't actually assigned it to any objects in my scene. So the way it works is that you can have like one material assigned to more than one object in your scene. And the way that you assign it is we select the object, and we right click, or we hold down the right mouse button on the object, or just right click, and we say assign material to selection. And now that object no longer has its preview color, it actually has the material we've created. And again, we can also do the same thing for these two objects. So let's right click and go assign material to selection. And now everything in my scene has this one material, and any changes that I make will affect all three objects in the scene. And it's a useful thing to do is also to rename your materials. So if I call this, I don't know, test material, but you should give it a name, depending on where it is. If you're doing it for like the body of your car, you'd call it, car body material or whatever you like. You don't have to put material in the name, but I just find it's quite helpful. Great, so that's our basic color. We can also affect how shiny the object is. So you can see here that this object here looks relatively shiny, and that's because it's got a specular highlight on it. So a little test here. Do you think a more kind of shiny object would have a smaller highlight or a larger highlight? And it may be the opposite of what you actually expect. So a less shiny object will actually have a bigger kind of specular highlight. So something like this is a less shiny object. A very, very reflective object would have a very small specular highlight. And what you'll see I'm doing is I'm affecting in the reflections section, I'm just dragging on the arrows to affect the size of the specular highlight, and it's the roughness setting here. And just be careful, because there's actually a roughness setting above that in the base color, but that's not the one we want to use to affect the specular highlight. It's this roughness setting. So a very rough, if we set it completely to 1, our highlight will completely disappear. If we set it like really down, we'll get a very small highlight like that. And we can also affect the color of the highlight. If we come in here and pick a color, we can give it a sort of a colored tinge, and we can also affect the actual overall kind of intensity of the highlight by affecting the reflections value here. Great. So if you want to apply a texture to this, you can actually apply an image as a material, and the image will be kind of wrapped around the object. And the way that we do that is we click on where it says base color. There's a little box next to the color, and we click on that. And now after that, we need to go and click on bitmap lookup. So bitmap is just another name for an image file. And you can actually have other kind of images attached, but we're going to attach an image file. So that'll be bitmap lookup. So let's click on OK. And now you'll need to go and find the image you want to apply on your hard drive. So I'm going to apply this picture here, and I'm going to click on open, and now that image gets applied as a texture to the object itself. So you can see now it's ignoring the base color. If I want to remove that image, what I will do is I'll go over to my main view here, and there's actually, this is the image file that's plugged into the base color. And if I click on that little kind of link, I can then hit the delete key, and that will then remove the image. There we go. And to connect it back up, I can either go through this again, or I can drag on the RGB value and plug it back into the base color over here. So the way that the image actually gets wrapped around the object depends on something called the UV map. And we're not going to cover that in this session because it's a bit more advanced. But you can see that, for example, on this object here, we do have some kind of, the image sort of gets a bit squished at the top. And here the image is being a bit distorted at the top. I will just show you kind of what the UV map looks like, but I'm not expecting you to be able to change this at all in this session. So if I select one of the objects and I just type in here the unwrap UVW, and we click on the UV editor, this is sort of like an unwrapped version of this 3D model here. And I can show you what it looks like for the cylinder as well. Here we go, there's the cylinder has been unwrapped here over the texture. But again, it's not something I'm expecting you to be able to adjust at the moment, but just to let you know, that is kind of, there is a part of 3ds Max that deals with how the image is actually unwrapped over the object. Okay, so just so you know, when you actually save your scene, if I go to File, Save As, basically I'd end up with a 3ds Max scene file like this. But the important thing to understand is that this scene file doesn't actually contain the image that I'm using for the texture here. So you'll see here I've got my 3ds Max scene file, but I've also got the original image file here as well. And if I was to delete this image file, then the image would disappear from the objects in the 3ds Max scene. Now what this means is that if you're working on say a scene at university and you save that, and then you travel home and work on it at home, of course you need both the scene file and the image file, both of them, in order to be able to load up the scene with the correct textures and everything.